Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. This podcast episode will be a switch from where we have been recently. The title is Roy Bhaskar's Reincarnations, or maybe not. The meaning of that will become clear pretty soon. Just a brief review on Roy Bhaskar and who he was. Roy Bhaskar was the founder of critical realism and the philosophy of meta-reality. Really, the philosophy of meta-reality is the final turn of Roy Bhaskar's critical realism. So you can subsume meta-reality into critical realism if you like. Roy went through a number of different turns in his critical realism. The second to the last turn was called Transcendental Dialectical Critical Realism. Big mouthful, eh? In one of his books written during that turn, Roy, who was a Marxist-Leninist, made a rather unusual statement, which basically took up, I think, about half, as I recall, of one of his books. He talked about his reincarnations, or maybe incarnations, I don't know, but let me say reincarnations. He went into detail about them, excruciating detail, who they were, where they lived, what their occupations were, when they lived, things that, well, you wouldn't expect somebody to know. So when I read this, I mean, I love Roy. I wish he was still alive, and he had a rather sad last year of his life. He died a rather painful death, unfortunately. But Roy was odd. He was eccentric on many levels. And although he was a Marxist-Leninist, he was willing to explore territories that most people, whether Marxist-Leninist or not, would not be willing to explore. So, in the late 1990s, early 2000s, Roy took a trip to India, the land of his father. His father was Indian, his mother was English. You would never know that Roy's father was Indian from listening to him. He had a very strong King's English accent. I would have said Queen's English up until a few months ago, but now it is King's English, now that King Charles is on the throne. I thought to myself, did Roy Bhaskar have some kind of past life regression? I mean, I know about that. I've studied it as a sociologist of religion. And I remember when I was about 12 or 13, I tried giving myself a self-hypnotic past life regression. I made that up by myself. Did it work? No, nothing came of it. I just sat there with my eyes closed. I guess I was in a hypnotic state, sort of, but no information came into my mind. I was hoping it would, but nothing. Maybe that's a sign that I am at least somewhat sane, but it didn't work, regardless of why it didn't work. Roy never said how he got that information, or if he did, he didn't put it in the book. Maybe he told some individuals, like maybe he told his best friend, Mervyn Hartwig, but maybe if he did, Mervyn Hartwig never told me, and I knew Mervyn pretty well, not that well, but pretty well. So I don't know how Roy got that kind of information on what he claimed were his past lives and how he was able to describe them in such amazing detail. Amazing detail. What I think perhaps is that these reincarnations, or Roy's information about them, came to him during his meditations. Roy practiced transcendental meditation, which was a meditation technique started by the late Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was known as the guru to the Beatles. I remember Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He was a bit of a con artist on many levels. He came up with this meditation technique. Well, maybe came up with it is not correct. He revived it. He was actually taught it supposedly by his own guru, but he revived it and came up with some interesting ways of developing it. Initially, what he said is that a person could practice it using any mantra they like. There was no need to use a specific mantra. Then he came up with about 5 or 6 different mantras. And that's what I think he did to make money. Yeah. Because now what Maharishi Mahesh Yogi could do is he could say, well, if you want to learn authentic TM, then you need to learn it from a TM initiator. And the prices, when it first started, were rather low. Gradually, over the years, the prices increased. I don't know what they are right now. But just so you know, all the information on practicing the technique is on the web. The mantras themselves are on the web. So unless you have a guru fixation, a guru fetish, there is no need to take the course from TM. You can actually go onto the web and learn how to do it. Plus, there is another organization, I believe it's headquartered in the UK, which also teaches TM and uses the same mantras. But needless to say, you don't need any of that. You can just learn the stuff on your own and not spend a dime. So maybe Roy's knowledge of these supposed reincarnations came to him while practicing TM. However, that's not what TM is. In TM, you recite a mantra given to you by your initiator, and the practice of giving you a mantra is very systematic. It is based on how old you are. That's it, how old you are. So based upon how old you are, the initiator will look at a chart and give you one of 5 mantras. That's it. That's all it is. And you will be told to practice restful alertness, where you will sit with your eyes closed and silently repeat the mantra. If your mind wanders, as it invariably will, you don't try to make your mind blank, so to speak. You don't try to return to a meditative state. You simply focus again on the mantra and let the thoughts pass by and let the mantra fade into the back of your mind. That's it. But there is no concept of meditative past life regression in TM. That is TM. Now, later on, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi added more to it. He lengthened the mantras, added a few more words, and thereby made himself a lot more money. Then eventually he came up with this thing called TM flying, claimed that he could get people to fly. Now, could he do that? No. I have watched videos of supposed TM flying. All it is are people laying on their backs and periodically jumping themselves off their bed. That's not flying. That's jumping or rolling or something, but it's not flying. But to Maharishi, he was teaching his disciples how to fly. And that was supposedly a kind of city, which is a kind of Hindu magical technique that is practiced by some schools of tantric Hinduism. And so, in a sense, TM is a branch of Tantra, the more mystical, esoteric form of Hinduism. And there are actually tantric scriptures as well. So, the fact that TM is practiced in that kind of systematic way, where you don't try to not think, but you simply don't try to think. And if thoughts come into your mind, you simply let them go by and you return your mind to the mantra. Yes, that's it. There's no place in that for past life regression. But all I can think is that Roy, as creative as he was, came up with a way to integrate past life regression into TM. And that is what I believe, because I can't think of any other explanation. Did he dream of his past lives? Maybe, but you can't control your dreams in that kind of specific way. Did he hallucinate them? That is a possibility. I would not dismiss that. As far as I know, Roy was not insane, but he might have had some type of hallucination, especially in the last year of his life when he was in a tremendous amount of pain. So I think that is a issue that should not be dismissed, that he may have actually had hallucinations. But I don't think so. I think it was something that he did in connection with transcendental meditation, or TM. Now, do I believe in reincarnation? Well, whether I believe in it or disbelieve in it is not really relevant to this discussion. However, since I asked, you didn't ask, but I asked, I will say, no, I don't. Does that matter to you? It shouldn't. Who cares? Who cares what I think? But I will tell you what I think. Here is how I understand the way in which people supposedly get these information, this information on their past life regressions. In my view, and I realize this is going to sound very odd, and I apologize for that, but I am an odd human being, like Roy was an odd human being. I believe that each of us comes from a chain of souls. We are not the same soul, so there is no reincarnation. But there are souls who share the same qualities, who form a kind of chain. And when we are born as a member of that chain. We are each individuals. The chain is simply a kind of connection of attributes. It is not a real connection of souls, meaning the souls themselves are not one. They're independent souls, independent individuals. So no reincarnation is actually taking place. Instead, there is that continuity, that return of souls, the coming of a soul in a chain who has that connection with other souls in that chain, and who, I would argue, may also inherit some of the memories of people who existed previously in that chain. And perhaps, I dare say, even may have some knowledge of souls in the future who will be in that chain. So that is how I understand reincarnation, and the ability of Roy, and not only Roy, a lot of other people claim to have had past life regressions or past life memories, is that they are not actually recalling their own past lives. Instead, they are connecting with other individuals, other souls in their chain, in their mystical chain. And that is why they are able to get that information. So the lives they are recalling are not their own. They are the lives of other people who existed in that chain. Now, that was an example of how I have taken Roy Bhaskar's philosophy of meta-reality, or actually more specifically, his philosophy of transcendental dialectical critical realism. It originated as a part of transcendental dialectical critical realism. I assume it continued into his meta-reality, but I am not sure. So let's just say his transcendental dialectical critical realism to be safe. And to understand his past lives, I think he simply put himself into a TM state. And when ideas would occur to him, ideas about supposedly his past lives, he would get up from his meditation and then write them down. But again, I do not think that he was recalling his past lives. I am not dismissing his experiences as delusions, even though I admit that's a possibility. But that's not what I am saying. I am acknowledging that his experiences may have been illegitimate, but he was misinterpreting them as reincarnations, whereas actually they were him connecting with other individuals or other souls in his chain of souls, chain of independent souls. So, if you have never heard of Roy Bhaskar and you have never heard of critical realism, this is an odd introduction to his thought, because most of Roy Bhaskar's work has nothing to do with any of this. Basically, critical realism and the philosophy of meta-reality are methods of establishing communism and socialism. That is what Roy intended it to be. He thought we needed to transform ourselves individually, and that societies needed to transform themselves collectively as well. And that once that transformation takes place through a dialectical process, which you can see on the screen behind me, absence, absenting the absence, and transformation, we will eventually arrive at a state of communism or socialism. And that is what Roy, I would say, hoped for more than anything else in his life. Roy was truly devastated by the corruption of the capitalist world system. He felt that it was leading us down the path of destruction. And in fact, like me, Roy was a pessimist. Roy was a pessimist, and perhaps that's one reason I was attracted to him. I was drawn to his pessimism. Roy thought it was likely that we would end up annihilating ourselves. Likely. Do I think so? Yeah, I think so too. The way everything looks to me in the world, it appears to me that we as human beings will not be around that much longer. But what I hope is that by human beings, I mean only the human beings in the first world, and that the human beings in the third world, the developing world, and the fourth world, or indigeneity, will continue, and revolutions will be staged in both the third world and the fourth world to establish communism or socialism. And maybe, if we are lucky, that spirit of revolution may at some time in the future carry over into the first world. I do not think that will happen. I think we will be gone by then, but I hope I am wrong. I hope I am wrong, but I really don't think so because I'm a pessimist. And much more than that, I am a cynic. Sorry, I am. For the time being, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.